Louis Pasteur. Chapter 3. Winning Marie. I must speak with someone who understands my work, Louis cried to himself. Louis graduated from École Normale in 1848. School officials sent him to teach at Dijon, a town about 250 kilometers southeast of Paris. They explained that the College of Dijon needed a physics teacher. Louis could not refuse the assignment. École Normale had prepared Louis to be a teacher. As part of his acceptance to École Normale, he'd agreed to go to the school that needed him when he graduated. Louis hoped to continue his crystal researches in Dijon. "I can't do a thing here," Louis confessed to his friend Charles Chapuis. "The laboratory is hopelessly inadequate. I feel as if I were in a scientific wilderness. Ah, where is Paris, with its activities and its inspiration?" What he missed most were fellow scientists who shared his enthusiasm for scientific research. Louis felt alone and far from his scientist friends in Paris. Fortunately, after 3 months, the University of Strasbourg offered Louis a position as professor of chemistry. Strasbourg was in the northeast of France on the Rhine, near the German border. The 25-year-old Louis Pasteur moved from Dijon to Strasbourg. It wasn't Paris, but the larger school did offer an improvement over Dijon. Monsieur Laurent, one of the school officials, invited Louis to dinner. At the dinner, Louis met the 17-year-old daughter of the family, Marie Laurent. He promptly fell hopelessly in love with her. Marie was a kind and cheerful young woman. She was a good listener, too. No matter the subject, anything Louis talked about fascinated her. Louis talked about science. She nodded encouragement and asked bright questions. He talked about his research. She listened intently. When he wound down on that subject, Marie said, "Tell me about yourself and your family." Louis told her, "We can easily trace our family tree back to Claude Etienne Pasteur, my great-grandfather." In the 1760s, Claude Etienne Pasteur lived near the village of Nozeroy in a region of France bordering Switzerland. He was a serf, a peasant. As a serf, he belonged to the owner of the land. The estate belonged to Philippe Marie Francois, the Count of Audressier. The Count owned the land, the livestock, and Claude Etienne Pasteur, too. "My great-grandfather dreamed of freedom," Louis told Marie. He began putting aside money from his meager salary to buy his freedom. His industry and patience gained his independence, but not until he was 30 years old. Claude Etienne Pasteur became a free man on March 20th, 1763. He paid the Count of Audressier 4 gold pieces, roughly a year's wages. Once free, Claude Etienne Pasteur took a wife, Françoise Lambert. The couple had 10 children. Louis continued. Their children were no longer serfs. The freedom contract with the Count applied not only to Claude, but to his children, too. The third child of Claude Etienne Pasteur and Françoise Lambert was Jean-Henri Pasteur. He would become Louis Pasteur's grandfather. At age 20, Jean-Henri married Gabrielle Jordan. The couple moved to Besançon, where Jean-Henri opened a tannery. Louis told Marie, "My grandmother died when she was 20. My grandfather died a few years later at age 27. I never knew either of them." Their son, Jean-Joseph Pasteur, would become Louis Pasteur's father. Jean-Joseph, without father or mother, lived with his grandmother Jordan at first and then with 2 aunts. His 2 aunts decided Jean-Joseph should learn a trade to earn a living. When he turned 13, they arranged for him to work as a tanner's apprentice, Louis explained. The calm of Jean-Joseph's early years passed against a background of swift and distant violence. While he learned his craft, the people of Paris experienced the upheaval of the French Revolution. They suffered through the bloody reign of terror. While Jean-Joseph learned how to change the stiff skins of animals into soft leather, Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power in France. When Jean-Joseph completed his training, he planned to buy a tannery in Salins. However, Napoleon's plans for France interrupted Jean-Joseph's personal plans. At age 20, Jean-Joseph became a soldier in Napoleon's army. As a member of the 3rd Regiment, Jean-Joseph saw fierce fighting in Spain. At Bar-sur-Aube, the 8,000 French troops faced an enemy of 40,000. Their heroic stand against the greater force earned for them the title bravest of the brave. More than two-thirds of the soldiers of the 3rd Regiment never saw France again. Some died in the fighting. Others were captured. Many died of disease. Jean-Joseph Pasteur survived. The army promoted him to corporal and then sergeant major. When the loyal soldiers returned, Napoleon himself reviewed the troops. He personally pinned the Cross of the Legion of Honor on Jean-Joseph's uniform. Napoleon could instill the utmost loyalty in his troops. After reviewing them, the ranks of the 3rd Regiment broke out in a loud cry, "Long live the Emperor!" Although the soldiers stood behind Napoleon, not so his generals. In 1814, they abandoned Napoleon and forced him into exile. Marie asked, "So your father met Napoleon?" "Yes," Louis said. Jean-Joseph always talked about the emperor in a hushed tone. "Napoleon's final defeat greatly saddened my father. He always speaks of Napoleon with great respect and glowing pride." Sergeant Major Jean-Joseph Pasteur received a discharge from the army. As an old soldier of 23, Jean-Joseph returned to Salins and his tannery. Water for the tanning process came from the river Furious. The name of the river in French means furious. Actually, the little river flowed as a peaceful stream, exactly the opposite of its name. Steps led down from the tan yard to the river. From the steps, Jean-Joseph could see a garden across the river. He often paused to watch a young woman working in the garden. One morning, the young woman looked his way. He waved to her. She put down her basket and waved back. She seemed to be an attractive and intelligent person. Jean-Joseph asked about her at the village. "Her name is Jean Edionette Roque," the shoe cobbler told him. "She's a member of the Roque family. They have lived in this area for centuries." Although simple people and hardly more than peasants, the Roques held a good reputation in the region. The family members showed unusual devotion to one another. This caused a local saying, "To love like a Roque," to compliment a person who showed strong friendship. People said he loved like a Roque. In the next few weeks, Jean-Joseph managed to meet Jean when she came into the village. What he saw pleased him. She was certainly pretty. What he found even more attractive was her enthusiasm and imagination. She seemed so alive. This, added to her humility and kindness, sparked Jean-Joseph's interest in seeing her more often. At first, Jean didn't know what to make of the old soldier. He seemed somehow withdrawn. He spoke slowly and moved deliberately. Despite his plodding nature, Jean-Joseph, she decided, was a man of high ideals. He concerned himself more with earning respect than with earning riches. Jean-Joseph asked her parents for her hand in marriage. They consented. After their marriage, Jean-Joseph and Jean Edionette Roque moved to Dole. Their first child, little Jean Dennis, died after only a few months. Fortunately, their other children survived. Virginie, born in 1818, Louis, born in 1822, Josephine, born in 1825, and Emily, born in 1826. Marie interrupted with a question. "Did you grow up in Dole?" "No," Louis said. "My father looked for a better place for his business. He needed fresh running water, a building big enough for his shop with extra rooms for the growing family. Soon after I was born, the family moved to nearby Marnas. This didn't work out because the tannery was too small. In 1826, when Louis was 3 years old, the family moved for the final time. Jean-Joseph found the perfect location for the tannery in Arbois. The family home in Arbois suited the Pasteur family. The 3-story building contained a workroom and shop for the tannery and living quarters large enough for the family of 6. A wall surrounded an outer courtyard. In the front was a little garden. In the back were pits for the preparation of hides. The Cuisance River provided a dependable source of water. "I grew up in Arbois," Louis told Marie. "I could not have been happier there. I still think of it as home. I must admit that I find excuses for visits back to Arbois." Louis looked at the time. He realized that he'd been talking for almost an hour. He rose to bid goodbye, but Marie prompted him to continue. Louis, who'd never had an audience who listened so well, recalled his boyhood. Louis said, I can remember my 5th birthday in Arbois. Virginie gave me a Bible. My mother made me a new suit of clothes, including a blue jacket with brass buttons down the front. My father gave me a book about France. It was full of drawings of kings and queens and famous men and women. I enjoy reading biographies of famous people. Louis's father encouraged him to strive to be a better person. On Sundays, he led his family to worship service. After putting on his frock coat, Jean-Joseph would pin on the Legion of Honor given to him by Napoleon. Then he and his entire family walked to church. Afterward, he and Louis strolled together along the road toward Besançon. One day, Louis asked about the Legion of Honor. "Are you proud of the award?" Louis asked. His father spoke in his slow, dignified way. "Pride." He looked at the ribbon and held the medal. "One must be suspicious of pride," Jean-Joseph said. "A person cannot be noble if he fills his heart with pride. You must work hard, for that is the only way to succeed. Remember this. When you do succeed, remain humble and give the glory to God. Praise Him for guiding you along the road to success." Louis wondered in what field he could bring fame and glory to the Pasteur name. Perhaps in science, because every year scientists announce some new wonder. Astronomers with telescopes discovered new worlds in the heavens. Biologists with microscopes discovered new worlds in a drop of water. Daring explorers made balloon flights to dizzy heights. Physicists puzzled over the unexpected properties of electricity and magnetism. Doctors experimented with painkillers during surgery. Chemists developed chemical substances with strange and unusual properties. Louis told Marie, "Despite the poor circumstances of my family, the future looked bright." "It must have been a pleasant time," Marie said. "Yes," Louis agreed. "When I wasn't in school, I helped my father with the tannery or played with my friends. We loved to explore the river." The tannery stood near the bridge over the Chouet Sanchi. Down from the bridge, the river rushed over a waterfall. Below the falls, the river flowed shallow and broad. Upstream from the falls, the river ran narrow and swift. In good weather, Louis and his friends liked to go fishing. Downstream, we caught fish by casting a net. Jules Versel, my best friend in Arbois, could toss a net better than anyone else. If we wanted to fish with a rod, we followed the river upstream to the village of Flanches. The town is famous for its trout fishing. My friends like to trap birds too, but I soon dropped out of that activity. "Why?" Marie-Laurent asked. "I could not stand the pain and fright in the eyes of trapped birds, especially when they injured themselves trying to escape. I could never be a doctor," Louis admitted. "I can't bear being around pain in any creature, animal, or human." Of course, the days in Arbois were not entirely carefree. Little Emily, the youngest of the Pasteur children, suffered from a long illness at age 3. The fever left her brain permanently damaged. Her mental development halted. She lived to be an adult, but always kept the mind of a 3-year-old. On another occasion, a mad wolf came down from the hills. During the fall of 1836, the rabid animal terrorized the entire region. It charged careless residents, mauling them with its foaming jaws. Some people died of their wounds. Others contracted rabies and later died of that terrible disease. No one was safe. The villagers looked over their shoulders as they hurried along the streets. Farmers left the fields. The markets emptied. Schools closed. People shut and bolted their doors. Some people didn't take enough precautions. The wolf managed to maul 8 of them before hunters finally killed it. "I was luckier than most," Louis told Marie. "I could play inside the safety of the walls that surrounded the tannery. The rabid wolf has left a lasting impression on me. 12 years have passed, but I can vividly recall the terror that the mad wolf inspired." Louis said goodbye to Marie. As he left the Laurent house, he couldn't get Marie-Laurent out of his mind. During the next few days, he spent more time thinking about her than he did his crystals. Within a few weeks after meeting Marie, Louis decided to take the fateful step to ask for her hand in marriage. Of course, he could not speak directly to her about such an important matter. Louis followed the rules of good taste by asking his father to write a letter to Marie's father. Louis grew impatient waiting for Jean-Joseph's letter to arrive. He decided to address Monsieur Laurent directly. He wrote, "Sir, a request of the utmost importance to me and to your family is about to be made on my behalf. I feel it is my duty to furnish you with this information, which may decide your acceptance or refusal. My father is a tanner in the small town of Arbois in the Jura. My sisters are with him and take care of the household and help in the trade. We had the great misfortune to lose our mother last May. My family is quite comfortable, but by no means wealthy. I have no property at all. My only assets are good health, an honest heart, and my position at the university. I graduated from the École Normale 2 years ago with a degree in physical science. Some studies of mine, which I presented to the Academy of Sciences, have been very well received. My father will come to Strasbourg to make a proposal of marriage. Nobody here knows of my intentions. You may be assured, sir, that if you refuse me, no one will know of it. Your esteem will not be affected in the least." Louis could hardly wait for the answer. He became concerned that Marie would decide right away, and that the decision would not be in his favor. Louis detected in Marie's mother a hint of approval of him. He believed Madame Laurent could influence her daughter in his favor. Louis managed to talk to Madame Laurent on his behalf. "I'm afraid that Mademoiselle Marie may attach too much importance to first impressions," Louis said. Madame Laurent encouraged him to continue. "I realize," Louis said, "there's nothing about me at first glance which a young girl would be likely to find pleasing. But when people have known me really well, they have generally liked me. With all my heart, I hope it may be like that with Mademoiselle Marie. Please be good enough to ask her to wait a little before making up her mind about me." Madame Laurent invited Louis to meet Marie and talk more with her. Marie did talk with him about everything under the sun except their future together. Finally, Louis blurted out his concerns. "Mademoiselle, my future and happiness all rest in your hands. The one thing I regret most sincerely is that I'm not more worthy of you. I lack completely so much that I should wish to be able to offer you a better position in the world, for instance. I'm so worried about your first impressions of me, for they are absolutely bound to be unfavorable. The one thing I ask is that you should not judge too quickly, for you could make a mistake. Time will show you that beneath this rather cold manner of mine, which you're certain to dislike, there is a heart full of love for you." Marie did wait. Days passed, then weeks, still no answer. Marie hesitated. She didn't doubt Louis's love for her, but she knew that Louis Pasteur had a second love, his research. She knew that when he took up a scientific problem, he would push her into the background. "Louis is no ordinary individual," Marie told her mother. "He is a genius." "Will it be so awful to marry a genius?" Madame Laurent asked. Marie said, "Louis will not be happy unless he can continue his scientific studies. I'll not be able to treat him the way other wives would treat their husbands. We cannot direct the family income toward buying nice things for the home. Instead, the money must go toward equipment for the laboratory. His evenings will not be for entertaining guests, but for writing the notes from his day's experiments." Marie felt a terrible responsibility. If she married Louis, she knew that it would be her job to see that nothing disturbed his stream of discoveries. She would have to center her life around him just as he centered his life around his experiments. No wonder she hesitated. Finally, Monsieur Laurent formally conveyed his daughter's decision. Yes, she would marry Louis Pasteur. Louis rejoiced. "My dear Marie, now I am confident that you love me. Thanks, 1,000 thanks for your love." On May 29th, 1849, Louis Pasteur and Marie Laurent were married in the Church of Saint Madeleine in Strasbourg. Louis delayed the wedding ceremony slightly. On the morning of the wedding, Louis worked in a laboratory on his crystal researches. He became so involved, friends had to remind him of the ceremony. Marie put his work ahead of everything else. She provided an ideal home life for him. She let him handle scientific problems. All the other many details of running the house, the things a husband would normally do, she took care of herself. She did it all. In turn, Louis Pasteur always found time each year for a vacation in the country with his wife. He put away his microscope and his notebook. For 2 weeks each year, he devoted himself completely to her happiness. For the rest of the time, Marie insisted that he put his work first. She told Louis, "I want you to retain the full force of your mind for your investigations." Marie took dictation for him. She wrote out his research papers. She listened as he described his experiments. By explaining them to her, the ideas became clearer in his own mind. Louis learned to express himself so ordinary people could understand. Eventually, Marie became his most trusted advisor. She learned more about his line of research than his most trusted laboratory assistant. Whenever he felt he needed to talk to someone about his work, he could turn to Marie.